live telephone town hall meeting. Tonight we'll be discussing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law passed last year in the U.S. Congress. We appreciate those of you who have already joined us. We are dialing out to 37,929 households in the 3rd Congressional District of Illinois right now. We'll begin our forum in just a moment. For those of you who have participated in events like this before, you know we're going to start with a little bit of intro and updates. We'll get you up to speed on the infrastructure bill, and then we'll spend the majority of our forum on Q&A. So if you've already got a question in mind, press 0, give that to an operator. They'll take down some notes. I'll be reading questions over the air, and we've got a panel here, including your Congresswoman Newman, here to answer those questions live. So again, welcome. Tonight we'll be discussing the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. We have your Congresswoman Newman on the line with us. She'll be providing us with some brief updates on the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Then we'll explore the bill through Q&A with you constituents on the listening audience. Right now we are dialing out to about 38,000 households in the 3rd Congressional District. We'll begin in just a moment. You may have questions about how the infrastructure bill will be implemented or when projects will begin, which projects will be prioritized, who will be guiding distribution of funds. If you do have a question in mind already for our Q&A portion of this forum, press 0. Give your question to an operator. Again, they'll take down some notes on your question, and I'll be reading questions over the air live, and we'll be getting answers from our panel today. Otherwise, you're welcome to listen in as Congresswoman Newman's going to do a quick review of the bill, get everybody up to speed, make sure everybody knows the bill well enough for a Q&A, and then again, we're going to jump into Q&A and spend most of our time on that. The Congresswoman has organized a panel of representatives from local transit authorities to help answer your questions about the bipartisan infrastructure bill and how it will benefit the 3rd Congressional District of Illinois. Again, we're going to hear some brief updates from your Congresswoman Newman in just a moment, and then we'll spend the rest of the forum on Q&A with our expert guest panel. Joining us tonight are CDOT Commissioner Gia Biaggi, CTA Chief Planning Officer Mike Connolly, and Superintendent Jennifer Killen from the Cook County Department of Transportation and Highways. Again, if you have any questions about the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, press 0. Give your question to an operator. I'm going to be reading questions over the air and asking our panel to answer them live throughout this 1-hour forum. Again, you may have questions about how the infrastructure bill will be implemented, when projects will begin, which projects will be prioritized, and who will be guiding distribution of the funds. Again, that's 0 to submit a question for Q&A. One more thing, folks. If you'd like to get email updates from Congresswoman Newman's office moving forward, press 7. Give your email to an operator. The Congresswoman's office will provide you updates on the issues that affect you in the 3rd Congressional District of Illinois. So again, 7 to get email updates, 0 to submit a question at any time during this forum for Q&A. And we'll also run a few polls. We very much appreciate your feedback in those surveys as well. It'll be your opportunity, even if you're not submitting a question tonight, to participate and give us some feedback. So thanks again. With that, it's my pleasure to kick off this live virtual forum by turning it over to your Congresswoman, Representative Marie Newman. Please take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Ian, for opening us up tonight. I want to thank my wonderful expert guests. We have just an all-star panel tonight. We have Commissioner Biaggi from Chicago, Mike Connolly from CTA, and Sis Killen that is going to talk about some of our individual projects that we have throughout the 3rd District. So I'm going to lean on them occasionally to give you more granular information, but I thought I would kick it off and say how excited I am because we're talking about one of my very favorite things today is transportation and infrastructure. I have to tell you, my work as a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee is really one of my favorite things in Congress and in the district. And I think that's why I like it, because it is so personal to our district. We are a transportation hub, as many of you know. About 1 out of every 4 trains in our nation goes right through Illinois 3 in our belts. So we're thrilled to have this expertise right in our district, but also to have these amazing projects going on. And there's a lot of them. So I thought what I would do is talk about this infrastructure bill. So it's known as the IIJA, which is the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act that we just passed, and was lucky enough to work on in committee and then saw this law passed and signed into law by President Biden. So let me tell you a little bit about what the law is broadly. So what we tried to do is think about it in a very pragmatic way. And we put a fix it first mentality to this bill. So those bridges, roads, transit agencies, waterways, broadband that were particularly broken, those get first priority in getting things up and running vis-a-vis projects in our nation. So all of those projects will go first. And then from there, those things that reduce pollution and reduce congestion and create greater safety throughout our nation are the things that will be addressed shortly thereafter, those fix it first projects. So we're going to talk about some specific projects to the district because you all have given us great questions about specific projects, but we're also going to talk broadly about some things. Now, I want to tell you about two very exciting things inside this $1.2 trillion bill. First of all, through the great work of the entire Illinois delegation of members of Congress and our two senators, we've brought about $17 billion to the state of Illinois to work on things like roads, bridges, highways, and the like, and waterways. And what that means is that many of our bridges that are in the worst repair are going to get addressed first. So we're very excited, but there's two laws that actually were rolled into the greater Infrastructure Act that I'm very excited about. And I'm telling you about them now because we were able to pass them out of my office. So let me tell you about the first one is the ASAP Act, which is creates greater accessibility throughout our nation. It's a $4 billion fund that effectively shores up all of those transit stations that are not ADA compliant. Interestingly enough, about 20% of transit agencies in our nation are not ADA compliant, even though that law is 30 years old. So this will make all of those transit agencies compliant and allow people that have disabilities, are differently abled, blind, deaf, or otherwise will be able to access these stations and get where they're needing to go. So very exciting. Second thing, very exciting. We have created a law that is now rolled into the Infrastructure Act and will be rolled out where we have here in Illinois at UIC, we will have a rail center of excellence. And what the center of excellence will do, will study things like how can we make our future greener and have greener transit systems, high-speed rail, looking at electrification and renewables, but it will also short-term look at how we can make things safer in our current infrastructure and reduce pollution and congestion. So that both of those laws were rolled into the greater act from our office here in Illinois 3. So thank you for all of my partners in the district that were helpful in getting those passed, and I really appreciate it. So a couple of things before I introduce allow our panelists to introduce themselves. Want to talk a minute about how that affects our district specifically and the state of Illinois. There are certain projects that will be able to be moved along because they're what that you call shovel ready. And that means that they're through their first phase and their analysis phase, and now they are ready to go with construction or enhancement or whatever it might require. So we're going to talk about a few of those today. And with that, is my great pleasure to introduce three experts in transportation in this area. I'll allow them to introduce yourselves, but first we'll go to Commissioner Biagi, then to Mike Connolly from CTA, and then Sis Killen. So Commissioner Biagi, if you want to take it away and introduce yourself.
Sure thing. And thank you, Congressman. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think it's really a wonderful opportunity to get the word out on what's happening with the infrastructure bill that everyone's been talking about. And a special thanks to you, particularly in your work in getting this bill passed. I'm happy to talk more later about what that means to us here in Chicago. But just for folks on the line, so I'm Commissioner of the Department of Transportation. So that's Chicago city limits. That's 4,000 miles of streets, 400 bridge and viaduct structures. We manage the city's bike share program. We're part of developing that EV framework, and we're a big part of delivering on the infrastructure for Chicago. But we also work hand in glove with the CTA, who you'll hear from, and the county. We're the tabletop. The CTA runs on top of us in terms of the trains and the buses. But we all have to work together. We do a ton of work with the county on rail, and as the Congressman was talking about, we can talk more about that too and what this bill means for rail. But we're all in it together. Delighted to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit more deeply about it. And I'll pass it on to I think Mike Connolly from the CTA.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm Mike Connolly. I'm the Chief Planning Officer for CTA. So I handle the long-term strategic planning and the day-to-day service planning, writing the bus schedules, as well as figuring out what's the next capital improvement project that we're going to be working on. CTA, I've been there 20 years. It's a wonderful organization with 1,800 buses and 1,400 trains out there running every day, even in the snow today. They were out there pushing snow this morning to make sure we could get service out. And we serve not only the city of Chicago with the rail lines and the bus service extensively, but also 35 suburbs that surround the city in Cook County. And so we work very, very closely with the commissioner and work as well closely with the county folks and with Superintendent Killen and her staff. So I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to call out again the Congresswoman for her sponsorship of the ASAP legislation. Yeah, she's the one who introduced it in the House and carried it forward, and it really will be a game changer for accessibility for all the transit systems. With that, I'll pass it on to Sis Killen.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks again for joining us on the line. And thank you, Congresswoman Newman, for inviting Commissioner Biaggi and Mike and I to be here to talk about the infrastructure bill. I am the Superintendent of Transportation for Cook County. And in that role, I oversee the planning, design, construction, and maintenance of over 1,600 miles of roadway within the county, 100 bridges, 365 traffic signals. But more importantly, it's how Commissioner and, Planning Chief Connolly, we all come together to balance this delicate ecosystem that we need to have for transportation mobility. We're thinking about bicyclists and pedestrians. We're thinking about those that get aboard transit. We're thinking about freight activity within our communities, how it's the economic engine for our region, but also can carry a burden when it comes to mobility for residents. And very pleased to be here today to speak more about the federal infrastructure bill. And thanks again to the Congresswoman for advocating so hard to bring forth these money. This is a once in a career, opportunity that we have to fix it first and really make meaningful impact in our communities with this funding. So thank you again. Happy to be here.
Well, thank you all for being here. It is a pleasure, and it is a pleasure to work with you on our treasured transportation and infrastructure systems here in the Chicago area. It looks like we have our first question, so I'm going to go ahead and give a shot at it first, but I might call on my experts to give a little bit more editorial around it. So we'll start with, can you and the panelists speak to the implementation of this new funding? How long will it take for residents to start seeing projects break ground and real improvement on our roads and bridges? So here's what I'll tell you as a starting point, that it will be very soon. What's great is that we knew that this bill would pass because it was a bipartisan bill. So we've actually been working on this since last summer here in our state, but actually every state has been working on it. So with our transportation partners, the Illinois Department of Transportation, Chicago Department of Transportation, and then specific partners like CTA, Metra, and PACE and the like. So in the next few months, we should see things breaking down. It is Chicago, and we have 12 feet of snow on the ground right now. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, folks. And I think we all know why. We live in the Midwest, but those are all slated projects to start. And a few of them are actually right in Illinois 3. So I'm going to kick it over to my friend Sis Killen to talk about Illinois 3 projects that will benefit in some way from the federal funding.
No, that's great. Thank you, Congresswoman. And the excitement of what we're able to bring into the district. And you said it very well. We've been spending our time really moving projects through what we call the project pipeline. We knew this day was coming. We need to make sure projects were in various states of readiness so we could take advantage of the vast opportunities that this infrastructure bill provides. It could be for design, as we get projects ready for construction, or to actually fund construction. So we actually have several projects in Illinois 3 that will be ready to utilize these funds and eligible for these funds. Really looking to start them in years 2023 and 2024. So really on the near-term horizon in the infrastructure space, that is very soon. We're not looking on a 5-10-year horizon. So we get very excited about that. One exciting project that we have is actually in the Village of Justice. This is an amazing collaborative that Cook County has with the Illinois Department of Transportation, the Illinois Tollway, and the Village of Justice, where we are actually partnering to provide 2 new ramps onto I-294. And that is a large regional project that can complement the work that the Tollway is doing. And that's a $4.2 billion investment all up and down the central tri-state. But we've partnered with them to say, what else needs to be done? If we're spending that kind of money in communities, how can we ensure that all community needs are met? How can we ensure that our infrastructure can support business operations? And for this project in particular, it is a nearly $30 million project with the construction of 2 new ramps. We're going to be rebuilding sections along 79th Street, along 88th Avenue, also known as Cork Avenue, and then also along Archer Avenue, Illinois 171. And this is a very unique project where it takes each agency to come together. Multi-jurisdictional projects can be the stickiest, the messiest, and the longest to come together. But what I can say for transportation agencies here in this region, and specifically for moving projects in Illinois 3, everyone comes to the table collaboratively to reconstruct these roadways, to partner with local communities, and everyone bringing, I always say, their quarter to the table to make a dollar and move these projects forward. The agencies, Cook County, we spend a lot of time looking to see how can we work with communities that might bear the burden of freight mobility. They have a lot of trucks. It's critical to our economy, but it should never rest solely on the shoulders of local municipalities. That is what this money does. It allows Cook County to come to the table with the state, with the tollway, with funding coming out of the IIJA and moving these projects into construction. Now, the important piece of having this funding available today is that we can also look at opportunities to reprogram some monies that we might have as this federal money now hits our projects, which we are eternally grateful for. We're able to do more in the community, and that's what we're really excited by. It promotes pedestrian accessibility, local mobility, and really being regionally significant. So that's one project that'll move forward. And the second one is the rebuilding of a major bridge structure. So I know that the Congresswoman is very excited about Fix It First. How can we fix those aging bridges? That can be a national issue. We're actually going to be rebuilding Central Avenue over the Sanitary and Ship Canal. That is another $35 million project that we're going to be beginning design on this year. So it's about an 18-month to 24-month process as we prepare sets of bid plans for contractors to bid on. But we're very excited to see this project eligible for the federal IIJA funding for construction to begin in 2024.
Well, sis, thank you so much. What I will add to that 88th Avenue and Cork intersection and all of the work going around, I was just over there and met with the staff from the Illinois Department of Transportation, and we really walked through what is cool about these projects. It is not just reducing congestion, which is amazing when we need that, but it will also create greater access to all of those small businesses in that area. There are about 50 small businesses within a half a mile of there that will receive greater accessibility, because it's one of those kooky places in our district where it was kind of cobbled together over time and a bunch of streets come together in a crazy way. This will kind of flatten it out, make more sense, make it a lot safer at intersections too, but it will also allow traffic to go above and beyond on those ramps so that you can get off the expressway and onto the other thoroughfares more easily. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to hand it back to Ian for our next question, or possibly poll, it looks like.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Congresswoman. And thank you for organizing our panel today. I'm going to take a quick moment to remind our participants out there and our phone audience how they can participate. If you'd like to submit a question, and many of you already have, you can press 0 on your phone, give your question to an operator. We're going to continue reading those and getting them answered. We have Terry in LaGrange and Josh in Countryside up next. We're going to run a survey question here next. And I'll also remind you, if you'd like to give us your email address for email updates from the Congresswoman's office, press 7. Give your email address to an operator, and we'll keep you updated on the issues that affect you moving forward. First poll question for you is this: what type of infrastructure projects and investments are most important to you and your community? Press 1 if it's water infrastructure. Press 2 if it's roads and highways. Press 3 if it's public transit. 4 for broadband, and 5 for electric vehicles. So let me read through those again and give you a little more detail on each option. Again, what type of infrastructure projects and investments are most important to you and your community? 1 for water infrastructure, like addressing flood issues, removing lead pipes, etc. 2 for roads and highways, repairing, reconstructing broken roads and bridges. 3 for public transit. That's, again, expanding and improving public transit options, improving accessibility, ending transportation deserts. Number 4 is for broadband, expanding access to high-speed internet in rural areas. And number 5, for electric vehicles, investing in electric vehicles to create good-paying jobs and a greener economy. Go ahead and vote now. Appreciate that feedback. And we are going to get back to polls in just a bit here, but we've got some really great questions here. Congresswoman Terry in LaGrange has this one. I'm concerned about the water system in LaGrange. The storm systems aren't working, they're overflowing, and has been going on for 10 years. Will the infrastructure deal with this problem? And again, that's Terry in LaGrange for you.
Well, thank you for your question, Terry. And yes, it will. So some of the monies are allotted for two very special waterway projects. Some of the waterway projects will affect our flooding that is going on, not just in LaGrange. I know it's heavy in LaGrange and Countryside and Brookfield and those areas, but it's also Oak Lawn has a huge problem, and on and on and on. There are many floodplains throughout the district. So we will have money to address those projects. It will filter down into them. I'm going to flip it to Commissioner Biaggi if she has any comment on how that relates to the deep tunnel project or any of those items, because one of the issues is that not all of our communities are connected to the deep tunnel project. And so what we have to do is either we have options, right? We can create satellite systems that will, and storm sewer projects that will repair the issue at hand, or we can connect to the deep tunnel. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Biaggi to talk a little bit about waterway systems in the Chicago area.
Yeah, happy to. And I think, we think we had the word transportation ecosystem came out earlier.
Yeah.
And really all of our water infrastructure, really how we approach resilience, it has to be done in that with that ecosystem mindset. Right. You push water somewhere, it ends up in somebody else's front yard, backyard, or basement. And so, we've been working on the deep tunnel project for a number of years, really trying to create capacity in the system to separate the combined sewer, the overflows where we can, and really also work. So that's like big systemic level, but we also need to work at that 1 foot level. The small things we do in neighborhoods like green alleys, where we create permeability in the alleys, and that enables water to percolate and not go directly into the storm sewer system. The federal infrastructure bill will allow us to massively expand that kind of, it's lesser noticed infrastructure, but it when it's not there, and that, when your alley is flooded or you have parts of the roadway that aren't managing the water well. And so this funding will enable us to do that and integrate it into our streetscape projects, for example, where we can create opportunities for stormwater retention, detention, and allow it to percolate. That's good for the whole system. And really part of, here I am transportation talking about water, but it's a fundamental piece of that infrastructure. We all touch it. One of our charges at the Department of Transportation is actually addressing Lake Michigan and the whole, 25 miles of shoreline that is really, with the climate change, the water levels are up, people's basements are flooded, cars are floating down the street in Chicago, and the federal bill, in fact, we just had a big announcement where the Army Corps of Engineers will work with us to look at the entire shoreline a second time, right? We did 9 miles, we have another 9 miles to go, and look at how we can make sure that we're doing everything we can at that large systems level. I think the other work that we're doing, thanks to the infrastructure bill, is working on the south and southwest side of the city on piloting additional stormwater measures. So where we have all of these technical ideas, how do we put those together? And so an entire neighborhood is benefiting when we're routing water to the right places. I think the other piece, if you don't mind, I'll wrap it up in a second, but lead line service replacement, right? That's a fundamental part of what we need to deliver in Chicago. We have 400,000 lead lines. That's a lot. They go right into people's homes. It's going to be one of the biggest infrastructure projects that we've ever done in the city, but replacing those lead lines, we would not be able to take a step forward in the way that we're going to, but for the federal dollars. So, this resilience bucket is no small lens, I would say, that we're looking at all of our projects through. And I think, to the point made earlier, when is this money going to really hit the ground? And I think, as Superintendent Keelan talked about, we've been queuing up projects, waiting for the day. We've done design work. We have things positioned, and this is a huge injection, moving something from all of that design work and engineering work into progress. And so I think you'll see things happen even throughout, this year, and then certainly a lot in 2023 and 2024.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner. And what I will add to that is that the beauty of the bipartisan infrastructure funding model is that it all gets distributed through the Department of Transportation, but most of it is pre-designated to the most important issues, among them lead pipes and flooding issues. So they actually are prioritized. So as an example, in LaGrange, you asked about specifically, LaGrange will be part of that prioritization because it needs it the most, given the that what we a 100-year rain and 25-year rain, which now happen every year, by the way. So they will be prioritized with that funding model. And I will hand it back to Ian to go to our next question.
Sure thing. Thank you again. And a quick moment to go over the results of our last poll. Looks like 37% of you voted for roads and highway as the type of infrastructure projects you'd like to see as being most important to your community. 33% for water infrastructure, 13% for public transit, 11% for electric vehicles, and 7% for broadband. Thanks again for voting in those polls. Let's go to Mary in Beverly next, who asks, is the infrastructure bill going to help Chicago public schools become ADA compliant? She continues that there are over 100 CPS schools that are not accessible right now. Will all the CTA stops be wheelchair accessible? The metro station stop right outside the metro station does not have wheelchair accessibility now. She says she has a daughter in a wheelchair and she has to go 3 blocks out of her way to get anywhere downtown on public transportation. That's from Mary and Beverly, Congresswoman.
Well, thank you so much. And it's a great question because I hear this all the time, Mary, if you're listening in. And yet the short answer is yes, is that this $4 billion fund is designed to create those enhancements in our CTA structures to, in fact, improve accessibility for wheelchairs and the like, and greater too. So I'm going to throw it back to Mike Connolly, who's going to talk more specifically about our CTA stops and some of our transit agencies within the CTA ecosphere of transportation.
Sure, thank you. It's a great question, and as has been referred to already this evening, this ASAP which is really as soon as possible, is a bill that's intended to do things more quickly. And CTA's got a plan that we've written that is our own ASAP plan that will put all of our rail stations into accessibility within 20 years. According to our Senator Duckworth, that's not soon enough. And that's why she sponsored on the Senate side what the Congresswoman sponsored on the House side to speed that up. And that's the intention of this, is to put some money in the pipeline to speed accessibility improvements throughout the system. That will help not only CTA, but will also help Metra in its work as well. And I think where you're talking about there in Beverly is going to be a Metra station that will be on the list for Metra to try to help reach accessibility. I know they've got a couple underway right now within the city of Chicago, and they're doing some in the suburbs and in Cook County as well. So those stations are tough to approach. Some of these rail lines have been in existence for 100 or 110 years. And so the stations were built when horses and buggies would pull up to the stations. They didn't anticipate people in wheelchairs getting in and out of these stations. That is a challenge for everybody, but I think you'll see some steps made and some achievement in the early years of accessibility for all of the transportation options.
If I could add to that, since, in addition to the train stations themselves, what we're doing, partnering with the CTA, is really looking at how you get to that train station, making sure that the sidewalks are in good shape, that we have ADA compliant ramps. So we've been doing a lot of work making all of our polling places ADA compliant. We've done over 500 locations across the city. That's schools, that's libraries. Those are the public places that you go. So we're really, again, working, I think I mentioned, really hand in glove here. So as the CTA is making stations accessible, we're looking at all the ways that we can make the area in and around it accessible, easy to get to. And so it will be a much bigger footprint of accessibility than we've seen before.
Well, thank you both for giving us some extra information around that. And to be clear, that the fund for the ASAP Act, which would create greater accessibility and make it requires that every transit station that is currently not accessible be accessible within the next 4 years with this $4 billion fund. So I just want to be clear on that it is happening. And I know that it is by need. So these are high need areas with high traffic areas. So Mary, I would say that we'll know more about how quickly your specific station is going to be affected within the next 3 to 6 months. So we're going to keep an eye on that for you and mark that. But right now it is a high priority for those stations that are lacking it right now. And I'll hand it back to Ian for our next question.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And I'll remind folks that we are going to do some more survey questions. We'll have another one after Josh in Countryside up next. And Josh is asking, who is going to be doing the work as far as will these be state, federal jobs, union jobs, or any contractor? And a second question, where on the priority list is the public transit updates for South and West Side Chicago? A couple of questions from Josh in Countryside.
Sure. Thank you for asking that. And so the first part of your question, to address that very directly, in the bill, in the Infrastructure Act, it requires that city, state, and federal organizations that are putting the projects together use union certified folks on the job. So I just want to be clear on that. There is also a prevailing wage requirement that everybody gets paid competitively on any of these IIJA projects. So just to be clear, the second part of your question, where is the priority list of public transit updates for South and West Side of Chicago? That will be available soon. What we do know is that we are a little bit lucky and that we need things a little bit more than the North Side does. Sorry, North Side. So ours are in the priority zone. We will publish that list, Josh, in the coming months. As soon as I get my hot little hands on it, we will publish that on my website. And then I'm going to hand it right back to Ian again to ask the next question.
Perfect. Appreciate you taking on both those questions from Josh. We will go to another survey question real quick here. Then we've got Sheila up next. Our next question is going to go like this. We want to know, do you support the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the investments it will bring to the Southwest Side and suburbs? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 if you're undecided. Again, do you support the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the investments it will bring to the Southwest Side and suburbs? Press 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 if you're still undecided. Let's get back to some questions. Lots of great questions still in line here. Sheila in Chicago asks, what is your vision for correcting the trains that disturb the traffic on the Southwest Side? That one's from Sheila.
Right. I'm going to start with that, but I might call in my experts as well. So let me tell you what we did as early as about a year ago. I got together with our colleagues, Alderman Shea and State Rep Hurley and State Senator Bill Cunningham and a few other folks that are in the footprint of the Southwest Side electeds, as well as some county folks. And we sat down with CSX train carrier, as well as some of the Beltway folks, and talked through what the problem was. Because Sheila, what you're referring to is likely that we were seeing 2-hour delays on the Southwest Side, which was astronomical. And it was doing two things. It was a safety hazard, right? Is that you couldn't get to a hospital. So first responders couldn't get to the hospital, fire, police couldn't get to emergencies. It was very scary there for a while. We got together with what they call CIROC, which is our safety organization coalition here in the Chicago area, as well as the train carrier, our electeds, as well as some of the CREATE folks. And what we did is we developed a new traffic prioritization model for the train systems, how they signal and how they inform emergency management. So On the southwest side, already we've seen a 50% reduction in the amount of train delays. It is not over, and I want to be clear on that. I know that there are still some areas that are clogged up and sitting. What we have required the various carriers to do is to not idle in an intersection. And we do know that is happening now. Now, we do have overly long trains right now, which is another issue that we're working on with the carriers. But we have seen a reduction in terms of the traffic intersections being clogged up by about 50%. And then if Mike, if you have any other CTA train or bus intersection issues that you want to speak to, go right ahead.
So, I was just going to mention it's a difficult situation as well for our bus operations, and we have procedures in place, where the detours would go, and if you're blocked by a train, what do you do, and that kind of thing. But I will say that Commissioner Biaggi is also well versed in solutions for train automobile traffic with the CREATE program, and I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Yeah,
Please do.
yeah, I'd be happy to. And when we say CREATE, this is this very unusual partnership that we have across all of the rail lines that run through the city of Chicago and the region. No other region in the country has this level of partnership where it's all of the major rails plus your Amtraks and your Metro that all get in the room with Superintendent Killen and myself and Secretary Osmond, and we bring in the CTA if we need to, but really sorting through how do we make sure that we have two things happen. One, that we got to get goods and services in and through the city, but we have to have great quality of life in our city, right? And so our job is to help balance those two things. So a huge part of our prioritization in this CREATE program, which I should say it's a $4.6 billion program. There are about 70 plus projects in queue. We've done about 30 of those projects. We are continuing to move along, and really the infrastructure bill helps us take great leaps forward again to continue this program. So what's in it? There is a lot that's in it that's great for neighborhoods, and something we call grade separation. That's what we're getting at, which is how can we lower the road, raise the rail, figure out a way so there's no impact really, that the trains can go through and the vehicles and bikes and pedestrians and neighborhoods get reconnected, that those are all going through. And so we have a number of projects in queue, and Superintendent Killen also is extremely well versed in this too. But we have projects on the southwest side. I know we've got a grade separation project with a couple with the Belt Railroad. We've got one on Archer. We've got another Columbus. We've got another one with the UPP, the UP Union Pacific Railroad. We've got a giant project that we're all fans of on 75th Street, which is, it's the corridor improvement project. It's the most congested point for rail in the entire region. And that means it's in the entire United States. We're that important. And so we're taking that on. And so these are projects that are front of mind. They are, they take a little while because it's a lot of work when you're trying to figure out how to move things like a rail line and moving roads, their elevation. But it's also making sure that we hear from communities and get it right. So what we're building back is a community that it's doing more than just moving, but that is a great place. And so that does take a little bit of time. But we're actually hustling. We just had, I'm looking at Superintendent Killen. We just had a lot of calls right around the holidays to work with our rail partners and hustle after grant. We're already putting requests into the pipeline. And because we've been doing the design work and community conversations, we're going to see things pop out very fast on that. So thank you in advance for your patience. We hear you and we're working on it. We're definitely working on it.
We should say that, and I like to be 100% transparent about these projects, is that they will take time. And you're going to see a lot of activity. So actually temporarily in some spots, it's going to be a little bit rough for periods of time when we're doing these things. But no, one of the things, and I think Commissioner Biaggi said it really well, is that when we're developing these huge projects where we're creating an overpass so that traffic can flow better under and the train can get across without creating congestion or blockages, those are huge projects. Because what happens is that imagine you're telling about 700 homes in one area that, hey, we're going to be, doing this type of situation for the next 2 years, tell a bunch of businesses that, and then reroute traffic. It is a huge undertaking. So please be patient, because your world's going to be a lot better, but there's going to be, periods of a couple months at a time where it's going to be a little bit rough with traffic rerouting. I'll kick it back to Ian for the next question.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that question from Sheila. Excellent question. Thanks so much. Let's jump right to our next one, coming from Mike, who's asking, he asked, how much will taxes be raised to pay for this bill? And Mike just gave us his zip code as 60458. Can you take that one on, please, Congresswoman?
Sure, happy to do that. Not one penny. That's the good news, is that we did a lot of analysis on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and realized that we had some unused funds from the last rescue package, as well as our 5-year package, which is called Invest in America, and then some additional funding, which all came to 1.2 trillion. So we took money from existing packages, so therefore it allowed us to not use any additional tax money to implement this. It's money that is existing. And we can just go to the next question if you'd like.
Sure thing. All right, appreciate it. And I'm going to run a quick poll here. Then we've got Jackie up in Melrose Park after that. Our third survey question for you is this: how do you typically travel to work? Press 1 if you own your own vehicle. Press 2 if you use public trains, CTA, Metra, etc. Press 3 if you use the public bus, CTA, Pace, etc. Press 4 if you use a bicycle. Press 5 if you walk. Again, how do you typically travel to work? Press 1 if you own a vehicle. Press 2 if it's public trains. 3 for public bus. 4 if you bike. And 5 if you walk. Thanks again. Really appreciate that feedback, folks. Let's go to Jackie in Melrose Park, as promised, asking, will any of the funds allocated be used for putting in new rails or just to improve the existing lines? Great question, Jackie. Congresswoman, who can we go to for that one?
You know what? I think I'll start it, and then I might kick it to Sis and someone else. So the new rail lines, interestingly enough, wherever, again, we have a fix it first mentality. So we're going to fix the rail lines that are in the greatest jeopardy, so that they're safe and they create a smoother flow of traffic. There will be some new rail lines put in as a part of this overall improvement process. So I'm going to send it over to my friend Sis for any projects she knows specifically where there is new or existing in the district.
Yes, so thank you very much for that question, Congresswoman. So I want to refer back to the program we were speaking of earlier, CREATE. So this is that large, private-public partnership, and you hear, the gates are down too long, what's happening. This program, in addition to creating grade separation, so taking that, the roadway over or under the rail, we are also looking at project locations where we can add, a third line, a second line, adding in new switches and signals. So a big part of the CREATE program is also building in those efficiencies. So trains can travel not at 15 miles an hour, but at 30 miles an hour. So that's going to reduce that gate downtime. We are looking at those on project by project basis. And the large project that Commissioner Biaggi referred to, the 75th Street Corridor Improvement Project, we have a lot of new rails going in on that line. We refer to it as the spaghetti bowl of the rail network, and that is for the nation. So we're straightening out, we're adding in new rail lines so that we don't have, that crisscross and intersection and things operating like a stoplight. So we're creating those efficiencies, with this program. But I think to answer that question specifically, Jackie, we are looking at each of the problematic locations and determining what is the appropriate solution to address the problem at hand. And we're looking not only at the problem at that location, but really stepping back and looking at that 30,000 foot elevation, that what do we need for the region? Because Chicago is the freight hub of not just this region, the state, but for the entire nation.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's very interesting here in Illinois 3. We have the unusual situation where literally about 25% of all trains go through our specific district every single day. And what that means is that we are literally the aorta of trains in the nation. So it is very complex. I will go ahead and hand it back over to Ian for the next question.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Superintendent. And another great question. Thank you to Jackie. Let's get this one in here. A quick reminder, folks, if you wanted to get email updates from the Congresswoman's office, I'll do a last call here. You can press 7 on your phone, give your email to an operator, and we'll make sure we keep you updated on the issues that affect you in the 3rd Congressional District moving forward. So again, 7 if you have any email addresses you'd like to give us for updates. Next one is this: can the Cook County rep speak to any projects that will affect our highways? This one's from Alice.
Good. So I'm going to start out, and then I am going to hand it over to my 3 colleagues here. We do know in the line of Fix It First that the Eisenhower will receive some funding and some project prioritization, but it doesn't mean that the Stevenson, the Tri-State, and the Kennedy are not going to receive money as well, because the monies are distributed in a very specific way. There's the Fix It First group, and then they're prioritized, and then there are competitive grants attached to the monies attached to the IIJA. And so the short answer is probably the first one out of the gate is going to be the Eisenhower, but that doesn't mean that the other expressways will not receive money. I think I'll give it to Commissioner Biaggi to take a shot at that, and then our other 2 colleagues want to as well.
No, thank you for that. And I think that is right. You know, in the trillion plus bill, there are some new programs, and there are some programs that have existed, and so we know how to go after them. But in terms of sort of these signature projects like the Eisenhower, that's one that, as the Congressman mentioned, that we're looking very closely at. I think part of the challenge with these projects is we want to make sure that we're doing things like investing in the blue line, right, that runs along it. And that's something that we'll work with CTA on, and that we're also connecting neighborhoods. You know, historically, of course, the expressway systems were put in, and maybe there wasn't a ton of thought about what happened to the neighborhoods in and around them. And so this is a really significant opportunity to think about that. How do we connect across the expressways? How do we make these edges next to communities really work? It's kind of like the grade separation projects I was talking about, right? This is an opportunity to make those corrections and make the quality of life quite a bit better. And so, you know, we're looking at that. We work closely with IDOT. You know, we actually maintain all of the bridges over the expressway system in the city of Chicago. And I mentioned that those are part of those 400 bridge and viaduct structures that we manage. And so part of the investment will be in the bridge structures that are needed. And those are also, those can be giant projects. If anyone experienced the Montrose Bridge replacement project, which was just massive, those are the kinds of projects that take a lot of planning, a lot of design, but the funding is there to help make it happen. We look at what happened in Pittsburgh, right? When President Biden went in advance to talk about infrastructure, and the bridge in Pittsburgh collapsed. That was ranked, I think, a 4, which is not good. We have bridges in the same condition that we need to get at. And so as part of that expressway investment, we'll be investing in these bridges to shore them up. And the state will be doing a lot to do expressway improvements. And so I'll pass to my colleagues who may want to weigh in as well.
Sister Mike, jump in if you have some comments around our highways.
Yeah, I would echo everything that you had said, Congresswoman, and what Commissioner Biaggi has said, is that we are looking for those opportunities, repairing bridges. And I think as we're thinking about improvements to the highway system or expressway system, you know, we're also cognizant to make sure that we're taking care of those local street connections in addition to that. So I think that's the great partnership that you do see time and time again with the agencies in this region. It's not just what we need to do, but what we should be doing to make sure that these are comprehensive solutions to transportation challenges in the region.
And all I would add to that is something that the Congresswoman has already said. The rulemaking for most of this additional funding hasn't been written yet, or is being written right now. Yeah. And so we all have lists of which bridges need to work the first, and we all have bridges that we know we want to have addressed and be done. We don't know exactly what the direction of the funding will be, and the Congresswoman mentioned we'll know very shortly here, 4 to 6 months. We'll have a detailed list of all of the projects lined up, because we'll know what the rules are for the distribution of the funding. Right now, it's been mentioned, worst first, but there's a lot of worst in the region here, a lot of worst in your district, as well as in the city of Chicago and within the county. So we have a lot of things that we need to pay attention to until we get that final detailed rulemaking that's going to come out. We really can't line up the specifics of any projects yet.
Agree. Ian, if you want to take the next question.
Sure thing, will do. All right, we've got Catherine up next. I wanted to read the results of our last polling question, though. We asked you, how do you typically travel to work? 69% said their own vehicle, 22% public trains, 6% public bus, and 2% apiece to bicycling and walking. Not as popular in the winter, of course. Thanks, everybody, for voting. Let's go to Catherine in Beverly, who asks, can you and the CTA representative talk about expanding the red line on the south side? That's, again, Catherine in Beverly.
Well, thank you for your question. Before I answer that, Catherine, I do want to make a pitch for our transit agencies. So as many of you know, I am a huge fan of our transit agencies because it actually helps reduce our emission footprint. Our goal as a country is to reduce emissions in this country by 50%. Our very best shot at doing that is if more people get on trains and use mass transit. It automatically brings our emissions down in a very significant way, exponentially. So I'm asking everybody to really think about that. By the way, you can read on the train, you can read on the bus. There's lots of good things you can do, and you can be very time effective, which is why I like using them whenever possible. But I encourage everybody to get on mass transit and use our wonderful transit agencies, because they're going to get better because we're going to give them some money to make it better. So I'll answer Catherine's question, though, about the red line. That is being looked at, and I'm going to send that right over to Mike to give you a little bit of more color on that.
Sure enough, Congresswoman. And the red line extension on the south side is in its pre-engineering phase. We're hoping to actually enter the engineering phase late in 2022. So later on this calendar year. That is almost a 6 mile, 5.8 mile extension of the red line south from 95th Street all the way down to 130th Street. It actually is just south of 130th Street, right in 132nd, 133rd Street. That will add 4 stations to that line and connect it to the rest of the red line, the rest of our system there. It's an area, really the only area in the city of Chicago where the rail lines don't go to the edge of the city, is that far south side. And so that is in the works, and we're looking forward to the money coming in this bill to help fill out the very large budget that will be needed to make that project happen. And it's in the works, and it's something that we've probably made more progress on in the last 3 years than we have made in the 15 years before that. So we've actually taken this project out, shaken the dust off of it, set it on its feet, and moved it forward. It'll be walking on its own, we hope, fairly soon. And we're excited about this opportunity to use this funding from this bill to fill in the federal portion that's needed to build this rail line extension.
Great. I'll throw it back to Ian. It looks like we have maybe a couple of final poll results.
Yep, we've got the results of our second poll. We asked, do you support the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the investments it will bring to the south side and the suburbs? 74% of you said yes, 16% no, and 10% were undecided. Again, really appreciate everybody voting in those surveys. And Congresswoman, we're just about out of time here, so I'd like to turn it back over to you to offer any final thoughts. And then for anybody who needs additional assistance from your office, I'll take care of that at the very end here. So back to you.
Well, thank you so much. Well, thank you everybody for attending. Great questions tonight. I think that we achieved our goal, is to make this specific to the district and to the region so that you can understand in a very tangible way how this infrastructure bill, which actually is transformative to our nation, it is the single largest investment our country has made ever in transit agencies across this nation. So it is really significant, and it's historical in nature. So thank you all for joining tonight, and thank you to my great guests, Gia Biaggi, Mike Connolly, and Sis Killen. Always enjoy working with you, and so good to see you. And I just want to tell everybody again, our transportation and infrastructure competitiveness, say that 3 times fast, is how this country is known. We are going to be a global leader again in that area. So I appreciate everybody in our district being a good user of transportation, but also being a believer in transportation. So with that, I will thank everybody for attending tonight. And then Ian, if you have any closing details you need to share.
Yeah, and thank you, Congresswoman, for organizing our panel tonight and for putting together this forum. We appreciate you. And for folks who still need assistance from the Congresswoman's office, you can find more information on the work she does at newman.house.gov. If you need to call the district office, that phone number is going to be 773-948-6223. Again, if you need to get a hold of the district office, 773-948-6223. You can find the Congresswoman on our social channels at Rep. Marie Newman. Again, at Rep. Marie Newman. And again, folks, thanks for joining us. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here. If you need additional assistance, you can also stay on the line here, leave a voicemail message from the Congresswoman's staff. Make sure you leave your name and contact info if you need somebody to get back to you with assistance. Otherwise, thank you again. Be well, folks. Have a great night.
Be well, guys, and stay warm out there.